The search giant remains the most impactful player across all travel sectors in our industry. And when they announced they're moving aggressively into tour activities and attractions with the new division that they've formed called Google Things to Do, it's time to pay attention. Not much has been released about Google Things to Do, but not many of you know, it's actually already been going for about 10 or 11 months, so it's well and truly started. Google announced this in September last year, but it only went to some kind of search engine advertising blogs, and they haven't really come out and talked about Google Things to Do in a big way. And they're relying on partners such as ourselves to come out and educate you and tell you about Google Things to Do. Now, it's here in a big way. So July last year, they started piloting attractions. And they did it on desktop. Then they moved to the mobile surface with just attractions, Google Things to Do. In November, they came out and made some sort of announcement. It wasn't really a big one. In March, which only about a month and a half ago, they released the Experience module for tours and activities, which is really interesting. And Google have confirmed when I was talking to them that Google Maps will be rolling out towards the end of this year, which is really exciting because that's going to be where the last mile happens, where users are in destination, they need to find directions to somewhere or go somewhere, and I think the Things to Do product will work really well in Maps. So there's still a lot more to come. Now, all the online travel agencies in our sector, the Get Your Guides, TripAdvisor, Amusements, Klooks, have all been part of this for 10 months. Now, to really understand this, you really got to understand the philosophy of how they built it from the ground up. Now, what Google have done is they've got a lot of data on these things called points of interest across their platform. These points of interest are massive search funnels. Now, I'll give you an idea. The Burj Khalifa, when I was doing this presentation preparation, had 164,000 searches in one day, sometime last week. So if you start extrapolating those numbers out by all the points of interest around the world, Empire State Building, beaches, deserts, you name it, there's a whole lot of search traffic coming in via these points of interest. So this is where Google Things to Do starts. And what they've done is they've categorized points of interest into the following categories. Now there's a lot more, but these are just some examples of what Google's doing because they know that people are searching for these places. Now, in the path of the user, once they go down these big fire hoses of search traffic, Google's putting in front of users two modules. And modules is just a fancy word for real estate that they've put aside on both desktop and mobile to put in front of users that are searching those points of interest. They've launched on desktop and mobile for attractions. And for experiences, not forgetting that's tour and activity, language in our talk, they've only launched on mobile at this stage. Now, I'm going to take you into a little bit more detail and dive into what these look like. Now, the attraction ticket module. And I always find it's best to take you through the user journey so you can see what's happening, and I'll let you know when they start touching on the Things to Do program. So a user will type in the Burj Khalifa into their mobile phone. They'll get presented the usual business information, photos, busy times, address, and things like that. But what's new is this button here. They're giving the user a choice of how to experience that point of interest many different ways. So this is right at the beginning of the funnel. You're now entering the Google Things to Do. This is the attractions module. It pops up straight under the listing. And let's dive a little bit deeper into it. For the first time, the user has an aggregated view of all of their ticket options to be able to experience this particular point of interest. The pricing at this point in time is ranked by the cheapest to the most expensive. Hopefully that will change, but that's how Google actually is ranking this at the moment. Now, the listings that you can see there, they're product listings, and behind each of those listings, there's a URL sending the user somewhere to complete their booking off Google's platform. Now, I'm going to call out the Burj Khalifa here and just to kind of show you, and most of the attractions I checked in Dubai are actually sitting like this. So what Google have done, they've been very kind to the Burj Khalifa. The Burj Khalifa hasn't had to do anything, along with a lot of other attractions. And Google has created this button for them, which is tagged them as the official site, and they've got a visit site button. But you'll notice there's no pricing or no other ticket options there. Now, the Burj Khalifa can't log into their My Google Business account and put pricing and ticket options in there. They can't send Google an email. They need to manage their listing and take control of it via a connectivity partner, which can add this extra metadata to their listing. Now, Google's crawled the website of the Burj Khalifa, and they've decided that that's probably the best place to land the user so they can buy a ticket directly. Now, if you look at what Ticket's done here, is they're taking advantage of their connection into Google, and they're offering all these ticket options, more than what the official site of the Burj Khalifa is. And if the user clicks on that one, 124th and 25th floors, the user's directly directed to Ticket's product page, where the user will complete the purchase with that OTA. Now, the Burj Khalifa will have to pay commission to Tickets in this anywhere between 20 and 30%. And you can see they've done this with a couple of their listings, landing them on different product pages. Now, here's an example of a company that we actually took control of their official site listing, and we added a couple of products and booking links behind them. Now, we've got some early data from how this is performing for attractions, and it's actually quite good. This official site button is now the Shard's second largest traffic channel for all of their digital marketing. 72% of new users, which means that the Shard is not cannibalizing on their other marketing activities that they're doing with Google, whether they're doing SEO or AdWords. It's really important that they're reaching new users, so that's showing in this program. The bounce rate in e-commerce terms means how long someone's spending on your website when they arrive. If someone's spending longer than others, it means that the traffic's of really good quality. It means it's qualified, so we know that. The conversion rates that we've seen on users landing in these pages and booking have been anywhere between 1 to 15%. So it varies depending on the attraction and the time of year. Now let's look at the experience module for tours and activities. Everything's based around the point of interest again. The user types in the Burj Khalifa. Now this time, if you scroll down a little bit on your mobile phone, you'll see the experiences module. Prime real estate, it's taking up almost the whole mobile screen. Now, this is where Google's listing tour and activity products. Now, most of the listings you can see there are OTAs, and there's no reason why tour operators that own their own tour couldn't be listing themselves here to avoid paying commission. They just don't know how to. Now, to be able to list under a large point of interest, or any point of interest for that matter, it must include admission to that particular point of interest. So if you've got a walking tour that goes to 1 or 2 different points of interest and includes admission into the Burj Khalifa, the tour can actually sit there and it's eligible. There's other different types of points of interest as well. The Dubai Fountain, it's a free one, so not everything is paid on Google. There's some free things you can do. Now in this case, there's experiences attributed to the Dubai Fountain, and you can see there's certain rules based around this, but they're quite flimsy, but it means that products can actually get listed quite often around these points of interest. It must provide a meaningful experience in addition to visiting it, and the experience that includes views. So a helicopter flight that flies over Manhattan and sees the Empire State Building probably couldn't get listed there, or if you're on a boat and you can see a point of interest in the distance, it's not eligible. Let's look at what the experience listing looks like when a user moves through it. If you click on it, it opens up a whole product page on your screen, and you can see the tour operator, description, inclusions, highlights. And if the user clicks visit site, they go directly to the tour operator's website where the user can book with them. So a really cool thing is that if you've got a tour that includes or visits or includes admission to 1 or more points of interest, your one tour can be listed against 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 points of interest. Things like the hop-on, hop-off buses that move around cities, like city sightseeing Dubai would work quite well. In this case, you can see the supplier, which is Top View Sightseeing. They visit all of these points of interest. They've got a lot of search traffic, people searching for Times Square, the Manhattan Bridge, the Charging Bull down in Wall Street, and Top View Sightseeing is coming in as one of the experiences that's related to those points of interest. So you can get a lot of exposure, get in front of a lot of users across a lot of points of interest. So the opportunities are quite big for suppliers. Now to participate and to get your product into Google, it's open to anyone. So it's not just for OTAs. If you own one product and have one car and one person taking reservations, it's an equal footing. You can list your products on Google. If you're a multinational OTA or a local OTA, you can publish your products to Google to these surfaces. So really, the opportunity is open to anybody. You need to go through a connectivity partner that can onboard your products and publish them to Google, or you need to go and do your own integration into Google, which can be quite challenging, but they're the two options that are available to list on Google. Minimum participation. Really, if you meet any of these requirements, you're in, so you can participate. Restricted businesses, the obvious things like marijuana, explosives, all those types of things, Google forbids. Interesting, which is car hire or mobility is excluded, so you can't list. Overnight hotel stays are excluded, and cruising as well is excluded. Staycations are excluded. However, if the accommodation isn't the main focus of the tour, you can list. So it is open to that. Virtual tours are forbidden. They have to take place in a physical location. Your landing pages have to meet all those requirements on the left-hand side. Pretty straightforward. You need to have a product page the user can actually get the information on your tour to. If you're sending a price to Google, the price has to match when the user lands on your page. If you can't take a booking online, you can't participate. So you cannot have an inquire now form. It needs to be a credit card checkout gateway. Thank you.
So thank you for walking us through this. I don't think, it's not really clear. I don't think the industry really fully understands what's happening with what Google is doing. I mean, it's still an early stage, but the impact could be, I think, so profound for our industry, especially because, as I pointed out earlier, so many operators are really behind in terms of where they need to be from a technology standpoint to get integrated. So let me ask you kind of first, is it, so far, is it generating meaningful volumes? Like, for your clients, are you seeing?
Yeah, so the attractions piece, we've been doing that since July. Admittedly, we've been working through, airlines closing down, borders opening and shutting, but the data that we're getting for attractions is quite good. Some of the larger attractions, traffic volumes are something like 2,000 or 3,000 users being sent to their website a month, which is quite significant when you think about it. The tour and activities piece only launched a month and a half ago, so we still haven't really collected much data. We've probably got about 200 operators that we're sending data to Google for, and we're tracking that, but it is not going to be as prominent as something like an attraction listing in the attraction module, so we expect the traffic to be a little bit lower, but you still need to be there.
So one of the things that's really visible when you look at the display, and I showed this too earlier, I put up the screen of the Burj Khalifa as well, so you've got one official site listing for the attraction, and then there's 5, 10, it can be 15 different options. It's overwhelmingly online travel agencies. I mean, who's gonna win this thing? I mean, is this really, do attractions and individual operators, do they have a chance?
Well, there's a couple of interesting things that are going to happen in the attraction listings, right? So for the first time, the attraction can see what their own resellers are selling their own tickets for. Interesting, right? You think about the agreements that attractions have with their OTAs, price parity agreements. They're very one-sided. It's always the OTA saying to the attraction, you cannot sell your product cheaper to anyone else than what you're selling it to me for. So I think what's going to happen is we'll see a shift in agreements there that very much should have a clause for things to do where the attraction shouldn't be, where the OTA shouldn't be allowed to list on Google cheaper than the attraction itself. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, who's going to win this thing? I'm not quite sure. I kind of understand if you're talking about whether the OTA is going to win or the operator is going to win. Is that kind of what you're referring to, or
who's gonna get the traffic? I mean that.
Yeah. Well, look. I mean, time will tell, right? I think Google's an advertising company. The more listings that are pushed in to these data points or the attraction module or the experience module, right? This is my opinion, Look, it's early days, but what will happen is there'll be a lot of listings for attraction tickets. There'll be a lot of listing for experiences. Naturally, what will happen over time, which happens with advertising, is people will get pushed further and further down the list Google will come out with very likely an advertising concept where you can pay to get listed a little bit higher. So I think that's coming, but I think we're still about 12 months away from that. So we've got a bit of a free kick. So, once that kicks in, I think the OTAs will probably have an upper hand because they've got larger budgets. But in the meantime, we've got a really good runway for small operators to participate meaningfully.
So OTAs have bigger budgets, but there's a little bit more to this too. I mean, I think about operators and hotels. I mean, the industry has been complaining about how OTAs seem to dominate. They dominate search, and it's not simply that they have more to spend, but they've got resources, armies, and technology that allow them to really optimize how they are displaying versus small to medium-sized tour operators and attractions. So as the product evolves, like right now it's early, the sort appears to be simply by price, at least for the attractions display, not for experiences. So, I mean, do operators really have a chance once you start to see more sophisticated promotional kind of features and the ability to upsell?
Yeah. Well, some of the early A/B testing that we've been doing in the experience module, Google will not tell us how they're ranking the experience operators in those tiles. Very hard to figure out. So what we did is we started testing things like adding ratings, changing the images, changing the descriptions, and we're finding that they had immediate effect. I mean, think overnight, one of our operators in New York went from being, one of the filters, which was $70 down, to one of the top listings by simply adding ratings and changing one of their images. So I think those sorts of things are gonna play a role. And I think operators, if they partner with the right connectivity partner that gives them the tools to be able to change their images, to be able to change the wording of the descriptions, play with their pricing and publish that data up to Google within 45 minutes to 4 hours of making that change. If the operator has those tools because they're choosing a connectivity partner to Google, which gives the operator those tools, I think they'll have a level playing field.
So I, as an operator or an attraction, I can't go directly to Google.
You can, and you'd have to do your own integration to Google, which is costly, and it costs, there's a lot of resource. The options available to operators of all sorts of attractions and operators today, there's connectivity partners that kind of split into 3 categories, right? And you've reported on this before.
Yeah.
So you've got the online travel agents, which are only interested in publishing their own tickets and their own products and sending users to their own pages to get commission, right? So not really a viable option for an operator. Very likely that some of your tours are already listed via some of these online travel agencies anyway. If you're happy with that, fine. If you're not, I don't think the OTA publishing your data is probably the best way to go. There's another category which is connected to Google which can send your data, which are the ResTech platforms. So not many are connected yet. I think only a handful. I think 5 or 6 are connected into Google Things to Do. So if you're using one of the major ResTech platforms, they can publish your data up to Google. But one thing that we've seen is for the ResTech platforms, it's an addition to many other channels that they have. And this is a very specific set of tools that you have to give the operator. And they'll catch up, but this is a bolt-on that's quite complex for the Res systems to give the operators full control of their listing. And then there's channel managers. So people that aren't an OTA, that haven't got a ResTech platform, there's 2 or 3 channel managers that are independent that can push data up for either attraction or operators to participate in.
Is there anybody here from the ResTech world that would like to chime in or respond? I know Fair Harbor is here, but I want to put it. Or ResD is here too. I don't know if anyone on the spot, but so let me ask you too. So if I'm an attraction, I've got my business listing. It's on Google. Isn't it my listing? I mean, can I I've got my tickets there, and now in my business listing, I've got Viator, Get Your Guide, and 10 other OTAs. Can I ask Google not to do that? It should just be my site.
Funny you say that. So we have that question a lot, where an attraction operator will say, "Why is Get Your Guide listing my products? Amusement and tickets is there. Can you get them removed for me?" And our answer is no. You're going to have to speak to the OTA. Depending on what agreement you've got with them, you're going to have to pull your products off them for Google Things to Do. So the ticket module is something that unfortunately has been, or fortunately, depending on which way you look at it, right? It's been put in underneath the business listing, but it's an additional module. And the attraction doesn't have any control over that. All they can do is speak to the OTAs that are listing them to get them removed if they wish to.
So one other question around this is sometimes I've wondered like how deliberate and how sophisticated the Google is around this. So some of the listings that I've seen as they're iterating around the product are quite strange. So as an example, I remember seeing one attraction and the prices ranged from €2 to 120 euros for getting access to the attraction. The standard ticket price was about 20. As it turned out, the €2 ticket was for a self-guided tour that didn't even include an attraction ticket. Then there was a cheaper ticket that was, I think, an OTA that was undercutting the attraction ticket price. And then you had the listing from the attraction. Then you had 5 or 6 different tours of different that would include. You also had some multi-attraction passes. Then there was, I also like Universal at one point, Universal in Orlando, Universal Studios. They had the standard tickets, but then you could also get a VIP. There was another ticket for $1,000, which was like, it turned out to be a VIP private tour from one OTA. So it just seems a little bit like it's kind of chaos in the tickets display. Has that, are they cleaning that up, or what's that going to look like?
Big time. So as this has been evolving, when they actually launched attractions in those early days, they were listing the tour listings underneath in the attraction module. So you had prices from $2 all the way down to $700, $800. You're a user, you didn't know what was included in those. So part of the reason that Google broke out and created the experience module is so they can actually remove all of those tours that didn't belong in the attraction module and then pair those out and put them into the experience module, which you saw.
Yeah.
Now, it will get messy because there's a lot of resellers for a lot of different attractions. So I think we'll yet to see how they handle that. What I can say is that Google has got a lot more aggressive with pulling products down that don't meet the policies, and we've seen that over the last 3 weeks actually. They're checking landing pages, they're checking pricing that includes all taxes, and they're pulling it down straight away. They're delisting products that don't belong in a particular module, and we've seen that. I don't know how they're doing that, whether it's AI or their product people are doing spot checks, but they're certainly starting to crack down now. Now that we've got a home for attractions, a home for experiences, they're in that phase now where they're starting to really police for compliance. And so that's starting to happen now.
And is this going to happen as well for a tour operator, where on my business listing, if I'm a tour operator, not an attraction, where tickets will start to appear from my tours as well as from OTAs?
So, yeah, I don't believe so. So it's only happening for attractions, which are in a fixed location that you can buy tickets, or either it's a free. So it has to be a fixed premises. Tour operators, business listings, we don't believe at this stage that are going to have the same sort of ticket options, because you've got to think about it. What traveller looks for a tour operator name when they're looking for something to do in a city, right? Like, if you've got a big brand like Karani Tours or Julia Travel, maybe, you know, but most operators, users aren't going to look for your company name. They're going to look for what they want to experience, and they're going to want to get given options of how to experience that, whether it's a base ticket or a tour that includes that as part of a bigger itinerary.
So if you're an operator and you want to get listed on experiences, it's all about tagging against the points of interest on your tours. Got it. Okay. Steve, thank you so much for walking us through Google Things to Do.